So let's go ahead and get started then with that. I'm going to let the panelists go ahead and introduce themselves and just share their location and type of industry that they are, type of industry that their company is part of. So Maggie, if you want to go ahead and start.
Sure. My name is Maggie Seaman. I'm located in Wisconsin Dells, Wisconsin, and I work for Wilderness Resort and Water Park Resort.
Adam?
Yes, I'm Adam Thornton in the restaurant industry located in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, which is pretty much a high tourist area, mainly spring and summer.
Okay. Rebecca?
I'm Rebecca Wagner with Deer Valley Resort, and we are located in Park City, Utah. Deer Valley is a winter destination ski resort for the students. And so we do not only skiing, but restaurants, lodging, all sorts of industry there. And it's very busy here in the wintertime.
And Josh.
I'm Josh Willett. I'm with the Waves Oceanfront Resort and Lafayette Hotels here in Maine, New Hampshire. Old Orchard Beach is definitely a summer resort beach town. And certainly a lot of Year 1 work and travel students that visit the area every single year.
Good. Thank you, guys. And thank you again for being on the panel, for sharing your insight. I just want to briefly sort of set the stage for all of the attendees. So the panel was comprised of host companies who basically walked through the peak of the COVID crisis. So, as information was hitting about COVID and regular or, stay-at-home orders were being put in place while governments were assessing things. These were the employers that were dealing with that, who had participants on the ground. So given that, based on the information we heard during the sponsor session, given that we know not many participants were on program in country in 2020 for the summer, we know that not many employers have actually, hosted participants yet during the COVID pandemic. And so we mainly wanted to share insight from these employers so that they can help employers prepare for realistic expectations of what it means to host participants. With COVID, with COVID being a risk factor. So that being said, a lot of the questions will sort of surround COVID and support during a time of crisis, how employers immediately responded, and then, how that maybe has evolved to current plans that you have in place. So I guess I'll start with Maggie. Maggie, you're in Wisconsin Dells. How did you guys, or how did Wilderness support participants who were initially impacted, with stay-at-home mandates and, initially kind of put out of work or, with the COVID crisis?
Yeah, so we had roughly 95 students from Ecuador that were here that had just arrived in February when COVID hit in March, and our resort had to close down in mid-March. It was hard on everybody, but especially the participants. We had to work really closely with those participants to make sure that they were supported, but also understood the impact and severity of COVID itself. During that closure, we worked with those students as far as we waived the rent. We are fortunate enough to own our own housing on site. So all rent went away, and we also helped support them with food. We went to Walmart. We created a pantry area here in housing, and then we would deliver daily or every other day to each room the supplies that the students needed to be able to obviously support themselves and stay well fed while they were here. And then we also worked with local community supports and churches actually that came and helped do meal prep here on site using food that was donated from local food pantries and then also from the resort itself. Prep the food, and then same thing, we had to kind of individually package it and get those delivered off to the participants. So it was a really crazy time. It was something that we had never experienced. And it was just making sure that the students were, taken care of during their time here.
Okay. And Rebecca, would you also want to talk a little bit about like the initial response and what that looked like for Deer Valley?
Sure. Since we were in the peak of our season, snow-wise and industry-wise, we had quite a few students that were still in the area. And when the pandemic hit and everything got shut down, very similar to what Maggie said, we manage our own housing units, and we were able to waive that housing fee for our stranded participants, per se, for the time being. We were able to, our food and beverage department, put together meals for that staff, 2 meals a day, every day. Weekends, they would make sure to deliver a full weekend set of meals. They were very well taken care of. And then our team made sure to communicate with each and every student to make sure that they were in touch with their embassies, that they had that immediate response with the sponsor, with the embassy, getting their flights booked, and we monitored them to make sure that they got to where they needed to be to stay safe.
And I know some employers are probably listening to this, and they might be, a smaller scale employer. You both are coming from fairly larger resorts that might have more resources available. So I think like one of the really wonderful things about the community support group is a collaborative effort to help, resolve issues, to help assess and respond to crises. And so I just want to encourage listeners that, like, yes, while we might have some of the employers on that are representing larger organizations, we also saw this same type of response more on a community level. And so, Maggie, I don't know, just to kind of circle back to you, just because I know we saw this happen, not specific to Wilderness, but also, within Wisconsin Dells, they have a community dormitory that many employers utilize. And so just maybe talking a little bit about the community response to this and how there were partnerships at play to assist participants, within the community, and how you guys were even helping in that process, that effort as well.
I mean, yeah, it really, during this time, we needed all the help and support we could get as well, so that we could take care of those participants. And working with the consortium and members of the consortium, such as Bridgepoint Church, was a huge benefit for us. They even implemented a Adopt a Student program during the closure that they shared with us. And then we really pushed to make sure the students were understood the program and signing up for it, where they kind of just filled out like a little placement card with some information, including their name, their email address, and a photo if they had it. And then Bridgepoint works to take all of those applications and submit those to families in the area who kind of adopted those students during that time when they were here stranded and they only really had Zoom or Skype and things like that, FaceTime, in order to communicate. It gave them an extra group of people or point of contact to have to help fill that time and the support that they maybe needed during the time. It's something that was a huge benefit for us as a resort, and I know that the other resorts here in the community really, really relied heavily on working with them to make sure that they were able to give us the additional support that we needed to help the students.
Yeah, good. And this is like one of the true highlights that I enjoy working. Like one of the reasons why I like working with the community support group. There's just so much greater reach that we have with a collective effort versus like just, everyone sort of having the same problem and focusing within your circle. You have so much greater reach when we're all collectively pulling resources together. So thank you for highlighting that. Moving on a little bit. After assessing the initial impact of COVID and, knowing that obviously many participants were, deterred from coming or were unable to come for summer 2020, there were some that did come. And so I mainly want to push this question to Josh. Josh, you mentioned that you fortunately, didn't have to deal so much with in the midst of the crisis, but you talked a little bit about a contingency plan. Can you tell us what that looked like and how you came to, that process of developing a contingency plan?
Yeah, so we didn't obviously want anybody that, and back in even July when the students arrived here, which is much later than generally when they arrived to participate in the program here in Old Orchard. But we wanted to make sure that if they were coming, that we wanted to have a plan in place if there was something to happen and limit any particular outbreak if there were to be one, and keep that to a minimum. So this year with our housing, In particular, we generally have housing that can fit, more than just 2 students in every room. We limited that to just students, 2 students per room. This year, this past summer, we were able to use some of our hotel rooms that just based on the business and everything with the course of this pandemic, to use as housing. The beach town that we're in, we kitchenettes, they're long-term stays, so kitchenettes in our rooms are a big thing. So every pair of student was in a room that had one, so that limited the community kitchen. So aside from working, they were all pretty well separated in their own spaces. So the interaction wasn't as large. Now, while at work, we definitely had plans in place and just protocols. The hand sanitizer, and we've all heard it, but masks were a must. We scaled back our processes every day. So in terms of housekeeping, the daily housekeeping, we cut that way back to almost non-existent for this past summer. So our guests weren't having to interact with our staff on a regular basis, and then vice versa. Seems kind of odd, hospitality industry to not do that, but it was mainly to make sure that we were keeping that interaction limited. So we were protecting not only our staff, but our customers as well. And then we're turning the rooms over in a safe manner. In terms of, having that plan in place, just in case, we did have the ability that in case there was students or staff or anybody that became sick or came down with COVID, that we did have other housing available on site that we could either move those students to or move potential, staff that may have come in contact with them to, just so that way we can limit it. It was a little tough because a lot of our plan, it was, we had what if scenarios for quite a few things. So we were riding it at a certain point to a case by case basis if something were to happen. If somebody were to, get sick and test positive, who they contacted, who did they come in contact with, how many people at what time, and what department were they in. So I think it's just very important that you have something in place so that way you can react quickly, limit the spread of any particular of somebody who might be sick and spreading that throughout the staff, because we all know that pretty quickly it could send the business into closure real quick if it's not taken care of and stopped properly.
Thank you for that. And I know you mentioned housing and the ability to, mitigate risk with your involvement in housing. Just for a plug for tomorrow's session, as was mentioned in previous sessions, Dan Bullock from Holtz Builders and Maggie will be part of a housing session tomorrow at 11:30 Eastern. So I do encourage all of you to go ahead and attend that session for more details on, if you're interested in making housing work in your community or collaborating with other, city leaders and figuring out that process. I definitely advise on that. So just on that same topic of housing, because I don't know if we're going to still get this like full employer perspective, but how does housing for the rest of you, how has that been beneficial? Like being involved in housing, being part of housing, how has that been a benefit to you? This is obviously a priority that you've set, so it's something that you're involved in, that your company has, made a priority and an investment in. So just talk a little bit about, maybe, I know at some point some of your companies were not involved in housing, and then they've made a transition to be more involved. So if you could talk a little bit about the benefits of having housing as part of your job offer.
Yeah, so especially having business-owned housing like we do, and I think many on this panel do, you kind of can keep track of what's going on. If you have students that are living off-site, I know for us as an employer, we want to make sure that where they're living is not only safe, but when they're living on property, we know where they are, what's going on. And, yes, they're adults, but there's a certain level of care when you're taking, when these students are here, most of them in the United States for the first time. And I've always looked at it too, that, having proper and healthy housing, they're going to come to work. They're going to be happier. They're going to, you're going to get the work productivity is going to be better. And I just think you're going to be able to get the full potential out of that student who's looking to get the full potential out of their experience.
Mm-hmm. And Maggie, can you talk a little bit about recruitment, like how housing might impact your recruitment, I guess?
Yeah, so Wilderness, prior to COVID, our recruiting numbers were about 1,000 students or participants per year. And once we were able to show that we had safe, secure housing on site, recruitment was much easier, honestly. It's a huge benefit, as Josh said, to the participant to have that housing that's close, it's on site, and it's managed by your team. So, for example, in Wilderness, our human resources office, mine included, is actually located in the housing. So it shows a better strength or support system for the program from start to finish. I'm working on the beginning side with the recruitment, helping recruit and interview these participants, but I'm here when they arrive. I'm here when they have questions. I'm here when they have concerns. And it's honestly, our program has grown just so much stronger because previously students would have had to travel, a long distance to get to my office. So something that maybe was small and minute that was maybe a bother or upsetting them, they didn't tend to come forward with because, it's just not worth the walk or the, travel to get to the person. And now they speak up about almost every little thing. It can be kind of crazy at times and hectic, but overall it's been a huge benefit to our program because the students are much happier because they get that support system immediately.
Yeah. Thank you. And for those of you who don't know, she is sitting in a dormitory right now for this session. So that's actually one of the empty dorm rooms behind her. So you can give a tour tomorrow in the housing session.
Perfect.
I'm going to shift gears just a little bit. Adam, if you can maybe share some information on how, as we look to hosting participants in summer 2021, how do you make employees feel safe at work? Of course, you probably have, these policies in place for current employees, so you can talk a little bit to that, but also, in terms of ways that we're educating participants that are anticipating coming, like how do you make them feel safe at work, and what health safety measures have been implemented?
So I guess as a probably minority in this, as a perspective of someone, we don't offer housing. We don't deal with the housing side per se. However, we are there to assist the students 100% with any questions they have. And we do always give recommendations on housing and ensure that they're not staying in some place where it's not recommended. During even non-COVID years, we do try to ensure their safety. We try to reassure them because even during the interview process, you can tell someone who is really on the edge about joining the program and have never been separated from their families. So to travel anywhere outside their country, let alone the United States, into an extremely different culture, it's very nerve-wracking. Now with this COVID now on everybody's mind, you do have to be there to reassure them that, we are there to look after them, both safety-wise and health-wise, and just to enjoy the program. As a restaurant, we're already established high in safety measures and cleanliness, and we do ensure, proper social distancing, masks, sanitizing. But to go above and beyond, we do try to communicate a bit with their families, let them know, your kids are in safe hands. If you have any questions, we're here to assist you. We always ensure where they're staying, and if it's someplace that is not recommended, we do let the sponsors know, and we get them to stay where they're supposed to stay. But we try to encourage students to let us know any concerns that they have, and that we are there to assist them. We do if they have any questions as far as where to stay or whatever concerns that their families have, we're there to help them. So I'm not, so I guess as far as, yes, so safety wise,
yeah. So, I mean, and I think you answered some of that too. I think I want to also have you and Rebecca, if you have more, I guess, to comment on like the safety side, Adam, feel free. Rebecca, if you also want to just talk a little bit on like the importance of how do you make employees feel safe in an environment where like COVID is a risk? Like a lot of this is frontline staff, right? Like frontline work exposure is a risk. So how do you make employees feel safe in terms of like internal policies that have been created? What does that look like for your organization?
Sure. So Deer Valley has gone through very thoroughly each and every department, division, and making sure that we're not only keeping our guests safe, but we're keeping our staff safe. And having our staff safety as a priority is so important, because then that's how we keep the operations running and keep our paychecks coming. I mean, that's what it's about in the end. And so many policies have been implemented throughout the last almost year now. We do daily COVID check-ins. You're not allowed to come to work if you have any symptoms whatsoever of what could be a COVID symptom. If you do, we have a COVID coordinator that they contact, and he gives guidance, whether it's called the Utah Department of Health or whatever it might be. And then from there, the Department of Health guides that employee, whether they need to quarantine, whether they are safe to return to work, whatever it might be. So that's just one step. Each department has initiated certain social distancing practices. Our staff dining rooms are being very CDC compliant in how the food is being prepared and given to our staff, as well as our frontline restaurants. Everything's been spaced out more. Restaurants are reservation only versus the cafeteria style we used to have. And we even have our essential staff are getting regular COVID rapid tests. And this is all just to make sure that not only are we feeling safe, but we are ensured that we have that paycheck coming, that we can keep our operations open, and our guests want to come because they trust Deer Valley as an employer. As a viable company, they can still come, they can still ski, they can still have a great family experience. And that also in housing too. We've limited the number of people that can be in our staff housing. Traditionally, we've had 4 people, we're down to 2. And we make sure that social distancing is practiced within that housing, as well as if there's any sort of a quarantine, we have separate quarantine rooms so that there's not any unnecessary exposure. Just little things like that have just really made everyone a lot more secure within their jobs.
And I think it says a lot about the type of planning and contingency plans that need to be in place, just given the current environment. So to be thinking through like, okay, if we have participants that, are going into quarantine, this is like a designated, like we have a process in place to accommodate that. And with that question, with that topic, I guess, all of us know the recent presidential proclamation mandating COVID testing for international travelers. They have to have a negative COVID test within 72 hours of their travel into the U.S. Along with that, there is a recommendation to follow CDC quarantine or self-isolation guidelines. And that recommendation is basically a 7 to 10 day self-isolation or quarantine period. I'm going to pass this to Maggie. How is your company preparing? This just went into effect on the 26th of January. So as you're anticipating future arrivals, like what is your company's plan for assisting in that process, assisting participants coming in during that time frame?
Great that you brought it up, because it's definitely been top on my list for this week. I actually have a meeting on Friday morning to get this finalized at 8:30. So one of the things that we're working to do is obviously determine free housing, if that's going to be the best bet. Most likely it is. During the time of quarantine, we've kind of figured out working directly with Intrex to determine, and with the CDC guidelines, everything that we found online, to see that port of entry quarantine doesn't seem to be a thing. We weren't sure at first if they were going to be quarantining at a hotel airport or if they were going to be allowed to go to their final destination. It sounds like that is going to be the case. So we're looking at quarantining them here in housing, individual rooms, unless they traveled as a pair. If there's two people that came together the whole time, possibly pairing those up. Again, we don't have this finalized. And then looking at doing a testing at the 3 to 5 day mark to determine whether or not they can essentially finish quarantine after 7 days or 10 days. And then with the food, probably helping, most likely providing with a Walmart gift card or something to that matter, where they could go online and use that to purchase an order for delivery or pickup that would come here, that we would stage it at our office and then deliver it to their room directly to make sure that they have what they need during that time, to help ensure that they actually stay in quarantine, because obviously we want to make sure that they are following it just to be safe. But we also understand that there can be some financial hardships with the testing at that 3 to 5 day mark. If it's not because of symptoms, they're not actually symptomatic, they're not ill. It sounds like there's probably not going to be coverage with insurance. It's not 100% sure. So again, looking at then as the employer taking on the cost of that test as well.
Okay, thank you for that. Just for this,
sorry.
Go ahead. No.
If we wait too long, it may seem like it's really far away for this to be planned, but if you wait too long and you keep these students in the dark, you risk having them quit or cancel the program because there's too many unknowns. You need to communicate with these participants as soon as you can and give them as much information as possible to help them make the decision, because it is going to be a different financial burden on them. They're going to have to pay for that initial test 72 hours before they come. And then anything that you can take off of their plate as far as cost is going to help ensure that they actually still track them.
And I think it's something to consider, as we've talked about recruitment in some of the other sessions, just an acknowledgement that participant recruitment is going to be slightly, lower levels than previous years. So some destinations naturally are of more interest to participants, some beach destinations, or, participants might have their own ideas or motivations for a specific destination. So if you're not really in like some of those like high pick destinations, there might need to be some thought through creativity on ensuring that not just getting the students there, but ensuring that you're, thinking through, maybe, is there going to be a financial hardship? What's the process to assist during quarantine? How can we ensure that we're offering like a really great package to ensure that participants are safe, healthy, during their full program experience, right? Shifting to another question, as you all think through, having gone through or worked through what you have so far, we have contingency plans in place now. There's, a lot of thought that's gone into participant arrivals that are coming up. I guess, what would your advice be to employers that are considering being part of the program for 2021? I'm going to let each of you or just take that question.
I'll jump on.
I would say, go ahead, Rebecca.
Okay. My main thing is kind of reflecting on what Maggie said. It's communication. Absolutely key to stay in constant communication with the students, have expectations for them. This is what the area looks like. This is where you should shop. This is where you can have activities that are still open and you can still practice the social distancing until we all get vaccinated, whatever it might be. Just that key communication so that they understand what they're getting into and they understand where they're living and what kind of an environment they're going to be in. I think that's really important. Go ahead, Maggie.
I'm sorry, I have a little bit of an internet. The other thing is be patient and be calm. As stressful as it is for us, or it was for us, to manage COVID protocols, it's stressful on these participants and their families being separated during this time. And the other side of it is they're still college students, and sometimes they're young and they feel invincible, and there can be some stressors with them maybe not wanting to follow protocols that have been put in place. So that's where communication that's very clear and precise comes in. And don't be afraid to speak up and ask for help. Again, working with the local people here in the community and volunteers that help assist us through the time of need was a huge help for us. Help keep our sanity.
Adam, Josh, I don't know if you guys have comments.
Just going off, just communicate. Important. Yeah. Sorry, you go ahead.
I was just going to quickly say that if you're an employee that's either new to the program or new to the program in COVID times, to either just reach out to some other area businesses that may have been involved last year, or if your community does have that community support system or a J1 coordinator, and if you're a little unsure of how to get that contingency plan set up, just gathering those ideas and seeing if they can take those ideas and apply it to your business and your system.
Thank you. Adam, sorry, were you speaking before?
Yeah, I was. It's okay. It's really the same answer as everybody. It's just communicating with students and just reassuring them. And number one thing is just let them be comfortable asking questions. It's amazing the news they hear versus the reality of the news. And, it goes back to their parents and their other families. And it's just be upfront with them and just be honest as to the exact conditions that you're facing.
Okay. Good. Thank you. And I know we talked through a lot of, in this session and others, like the benefit, of the participants coming and being part of ensuring that the tourism season can continue. But what are some of the other added benefits that the participants bring to your communities, to your organizations, to your staff? I don't know, Adam, if you maybe want to speak a little bit to that, like just some of the added, I know you've, met with some of the students in their home country, you've, established personal relationships with past participants. So what are some of these like sort of broader scope benefits of the program in our communities?
I think it really just outlines how, different yet the same we all are. And I think it really helps Americans in general understand that, the difference of these peoples we're also the same. And, most Americans, that especially visit Myrtle Beach, they hardly even travel outside of their area, outside of their states. So this is the first encounter they have with people from, other parts of the world. And it always amazes me when, students talk to customers and, they mention whichever country they're from. And, most Americans couldn't find it on a map if you gave them all day. So this is definitely a learning experience, not only for, the people working with them, but also the customers that we have. And it's just amazing. People, obviously they come because we have great food, but they also come because of the experience and the knowledge that they get from people they otherwise would have not have met before. So it's great.
Good. Okay, just to quickly, I'll end the session with this question. I know obviously the whole purpose of the summit is surrounding community support groups. So how do you as employers, I know many of you are members of communities where your community support group is maybe at a different stage than others, right? Like we know Wisconsin Dells, their community support group has been around for a very long time, whereas Park City, Utah, it hasn't been as long established, I guess, as Wisconsin Dells. So I guess as you each look at your community, what has been like how has it been beneficial in working with the community support group? What are some of the benefits that has brought to you as an employer and being able to, collaborate or be part of that community support group?
If I can just answer that real quick too, because sure. I feel I do have to give the Myrtle Beach area actually a lot of credit on this one. It's a very small business owner, but before COVID started, I had 3 locations that we recruited students from, and now I'm down to 1. So when all of this hit, my resources were limited, and I sort of at times felt powerless as much as I wanted to help these students. But I was actually very impressed and learned so much about how the community responded to this issue in particular, and how well they outreach to these students. And I mean, I did what I could to help these students, but I was like waiting in line while they were being helped by other resources within the community. So I do have to say I'm very impressed with how the Myrtle Beach response team did act, and pleasantly know that now going into the future.
Thank you. And if all of you would like to comment, that would be great. I know you're all members of different CSGs. So, I mean, I think sometimes as an attendee of some of these summits, it can be a little bit overwhelming to see some of the more evolved CSGs, talk about these great dormitories that were built in Wisconsin Dells, and you're sort of sitting there. I mean, I was part of the spearheading committee that started the CSG in Branson, and it can be really overwhelming when you're new to it. So I think just for anyone listening, it's each community is different, right? And each community has different resources. And so I think it's a matter of just slowly working together with various members of the community, collectively with employers. So I think it's important to hear maybe from all of you, especially because you represent different stages of a CSG, how that collaboration has been beneficial, or what you're even seeing evolve in your CSG locally.
So I'll say with Park City, we have been doing community events for several years. The primary event has been hosting our Winter Welcome Night, and it's a Park City event. We work with different organizations like Wells Fargo Bank, and partnering with other employers, Sheridan, St. Regis. We all come together and we work as a group to meet the same end goal. We want our students to come and be prepared for Park City, understand what Park City has to offer. And what we've done over the years is just add more and more and more community members to this welcome night. And it turned into a gigantic event, which has over 700 attendees in the past. And it's just wonderful having all these students come. I mean, there's about 2,000, give or take 2,000 students in Park City in the wintertime, spread across the entire town. And that event is such an amazing way to help show these students what to do in Park City, the different things like the gym memberships, or where the grocery stores are, or what hospitals they should go to, and all the things like that. The library resources. The library has amazing resources that no one would ever know existed unless you talk to them. Or the Christian Center has a huge part in our community. And what we've done is, over the years, this group has built more and more and more membership, per se, of we just meet more often with the different employers, with the Christian Center, with whoever else in the city wants to join in. We've added in members of the city who are part of the housing trust. We've added in concerned citizens who want to be able to help our students throughout the program. And so Park City is just very unique in that way that we work together, our employers work together, and we may not have the backing like Branson has with the chamber leading it. We all just work together in the leadership of it. And in the end, these students have a thorough understanding of Park City, what we offer, and then what they turn around and they spend the money in the city in the end, actually turning it into a great investment for us to all have as students. So
it also creates a sustainable pool of participants that are interested, right? Like, if students have a positive experience in your community, first of all, not only are we all accomplishing the mission of the program, right? That they come, they gain a positive perspective of the U.S., they meet Americans, learn American values and ideals, and then take those back and have positive stories, positive experience to share with their home country. But they're also telling their friends, their family, their cousins, their sisters, their brothers that they had a positive experience in your specific community. So it really helps, like, the more evolved that community support group, the more evolved that community becomes in their J1 outreach, the more sustainable they can be in hosting participants for years to come. I think that that's also a key takeaway for it.
And the other thing I wanted to mention really quick, Abby, is housing in Park City is extremely challenging. And Deer Valley is one of the very, very, very few employers that actually host housing. And so these events also help the students network, find other housing solutions, and have other people help that in that housing aspect. So I just wanted to add as well.
All right, thank you guys. I think for the sake of time, we might actually go ahead and end the panel there. So thank you all so much for your time, for all of your support and efforts on the J1 program, especially through the peak of COVID and kind of dealing with some crises and unknown situations. So thank you guys so much. Just really quick for all attendees, the next session will be at 4 p.m. Eastern, and it will be on, I believe, just a second. We have, the Promoting Race Equity in Summer Work Travel Host Communities, and that will be led by Heather Hardinger, who was the chair for the Branson Community Support Group. So I look forward to seeing you all then. Thank you.
Thank you.